All right, I'm Taylor Phillips. He's Matthew Hutchinson. Welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. Also in audio form later on Spreaker. Going to preview the Pistons. And first of all, get down to some Piston news involving Assistant General Manager Rob Murphy, who was under
People being nasty. No, listen, this is a time when things are going to come out over the next couple of weeks. This is what really stinks, though, sometimes about schedules not linking up. We were going to drop this bomb on Tuesday. My schedule didn't coordinate because of the kids. So now Woj comes in and scoops me. That's never happened before since we've been on this podcast together. So Woj scooped me by a day, but that's all right. I've got some info on what happened. So Rob Murphy is thought of in the NBA circles as a rising star. He's looked at around the league as a future GM, maybe someone that may work in the commissioner's office as things go and be kind of a right-hand man for Adam Silver. So he is thought of very highly in the NBA circles. He did have a consensual relationship with someone on the staff. It is prohibited in the workplace under the Pistons organization to have a relationship at work. So it's nothing that's as scandalous as what's going to end up coming out in the Boston Celtics situation. But it is a little bit of a scandal just because the person was working there, was an intern originally. We're not going to out anybody, but I'm not sure if they're still in intern capacity. But regardless, they are a lower level employee in the organization. That's what some of the conundrum is with it too, using his power to perhaps get the relationship. I know that's crazy that a man would do that, but that is what happened here. And it's just, I'm not sure quite why they had to at work. I understand that's where you spend a lot of your time. But when it's strictly prohibited in the office and you've got one of these 100 coveted positions in all of the world being in professional sports, you got to question the judgment. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And he is under investigation and placed on leave due to those allegations with that former female employee.
Correct. Yep. So the leave sounds like it's going to be every bit of 90 days at least. The organization hasn't decided if they're going to keep him or not. They really want to see what the public backlash is going to be. And to be very frank about it, the public backlash from a PR standpoint has been outstanding for the Pistons because it was a one-day story and it's already died off. It didn't even have a 24-hour news life. So it is one of those things where it's someone in the front office, not an ex-player, not the GM, the assistant to the GM. But in the NBA circles, this is a big deal that he's not possibly going to be a Piston anymore because he's well thought of. So look for him to go to another organization or possibly go to the G League and be an administrative role there if he comes back, and then ultimately working in the NBA office if he doesn't come back with the Pistons. But they're going to see how it goes through the end of the year and possibly right around the All-Star break, make the decision on bringing him back.
All right. So that is all the info you need to know on Rob Murphy. So let's preview the rest of the Pistons product on the court. First of all, the rookies Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren have been flashing in Game 1 in that 113-109 win over the Orlando Magic. Both teams were ranked in the bottom 10.
Mm-hmm.
Pistons 23rd, Orlando Magic 27th. I think in the scores NBA power rankings.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Pistons just squeezed it out. It was a war.
Yeah. Young teams that are growing. I actually really like what the Magic have done. Paolo looked amazing for a number one pick. So I think over the last couple of years they've been building. But the Pistons, you've got to love what they did. I know that, I want to really harp on some bad things that they did, but because they didn't really play great until the second half of that game. Well, I shouldn't say that. Second quarter, they came out great too. First quarter, they looked real bad. But the way that team looks, we might have something here. The rookies, though, let's talk about Ivy. Fearless in getting to the rim. And it looks like when we're talking about the bottom half of the league, he's going to be able to get by anybody he wants and get to the bucket. So I don't think that's going to be scoring's not going to be an issue for him at all. Duran is a guy physically that's a monster. And let's remember, he's extremely young. He's not going to be 19 until the end of November. So we're talking about a guy who physically should actually be in his freshman year of college. He reclassified at the end of high school. So he's a guy who's not even going to reach maturity until the end of his rookie deal. But if he's putting up 14 and 10 in his first game, that's phenomenal. There's not a lot of guys that have done that in their first game, especially coming off the bench too. That's a big deal.
Yeah. Just his only flaw has been going 0 for 4 from the free throw line. At least they were not airballed like Andre Drummond, like in the old days.
He did.
They were
I
close.
don't know about you. I did have some flashbacks to Andre Drummond, some horror flashbacks when he bricked those free throws. Listen, he's a young guy. Young guys that are big men, their hands are too large for the ball. It's a physics thing. Their hands are too large for the ball. They've got to come into their own. But hopefully, if he can shoot 60% from the line, that's going to be a huge bonus for him. It's just going to make him that much better. And if you see his low post moves, he's a big puppy right now with those. He's not mature yet in the low post, but he's trying low post moves. He's constantly doing something out there that you can look and point at and say, wow, I like that. I like what he's doing. So I'm higher on him than I even am Ivy, and I think Ivy's going to be the rookie of the year. Now let's talk about last year's star rookie, because I really think this year Cade's going to be an all-star. I loved what he showed that first game. He controlled the game when he needed to. He allowed Ivy to handle the ball and attack the rim. I thought that was great, but this is Cade's team, and he looks thicker than a bowl of oatmeal right now too. He got jacked in the offseason, obviously working with a nutritionist, worked on his game. He looked real good to me. Game one, I think it was 18-8 were the final stat lines for him. He's going to be a guy that's going to be like a Jason Kidd. He's going to fill all the stat lines, but he has got an ability to score and take over the game when he needs to, like you saw in the second quarter. Looked phenomenal out there, and that's when the Pistons, they dropped 40 in the second quarter. So for the first game of the season, I love the way they looked. Didn't really have the game in hand until the last 11 seconds when the beef stew drilled the three. That was crazy to see. He's obviously been putting in a lot of work. I'm sure them drafting a young center lit a fire underneath him, but I see him more of his best role is going to be a 6-man off the bench for a championship team, a guy like Stewart. But if he can hit that shot, that just gives the Pistons another dimension with him on the court, because you can play him and Duran together and allow him to play the 4.
Yeah, did a nice dish by Cade Cunningham after that smart timeout by Dwayne Casey. Now I'm starting to trust him too, feeding Isaiah Stewart for that insurance 3 bomb that pretty much almost put the game out of reach. But the Magic kept catching up, but the Pistons, the rest of them, hit their free throws insurance-wise. Mm-hmm. Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham, they hit their free throws, and then that was that.
Yeah. And what about Bogan, too? He's given them – what did I tell you when they made that trade for him? I told you before the trade went down that what he's going to give them is stretch the floor. He's not going to provide any rebounding at all. If you look, his rebounds that he did collect were tip-outs to him. So he's not going to be a guy who's going to crash the boards. He's not great defensively. What he does give you is he's nasty. He's a guy who loves playing in the clutch, and he can stretch the floor for you. So he's given them exactly what they needed from a veteran perspective. Great trade for them. But there's a couple things being looked at. Now, Marvin Bagley signed the deal in the offseason. Everyone thinks that he's going to be a part of the future for the next couple years, be our 6-man coming off the bench. Maybe as a big man allows us to do something different with Stewart. But look at that contract number in his first year. That's a big key. Indiana is going to be looking to unload Hield and Turner before the deadline. And after December 15th is when we can start looking at that deal for Bagley, which is right about the time he's going to be coming back. So although he might be a piece of the future, he also might be a trade piece, because getting a shooter like Hield to come off the bench for the Pistons could be great. There's also some talk about a certain player from Phoenix, a lot of talent there, who is not happy with the coaching staff or the front office, and that's DeAndre Ayton. The window on him is not closed. We've got young pieces. There's a log jam at the 4 and the 5, so we've got to move something. So there's going to be talk after the 15th of December about DeAndre Ayton. They're not done kicking the tires on him. Depending on how Jalen shows out these first 6-8 weeks of the season, that's going to really see how they affect that and how they scout Ayton moving into December and January, because that's something the front office is still talking about. And I promise you, it's on their big whiteboard of things that they're looking into moving into the second month of the season here in November. And then as December rolls on and they can start actually looking at those trades after the 15th.
Yeah. And back to Bojan Bogdanovic, he can also score.
Yeah, that's what he was brought
points.
here for. He's a shooter. He stretches the floor and he can put up buckets. He's
Especially
nasty.
from
Look at him in the fourth
range.
quarter. You know, he's a great guy to have on the team.
3-point shots too. Don't forget.
Phenomenal. Yeah,
Especially
he stretches the floor
shots
for us.
Yeah, he does. So I think that's it.
I told you I was going to come in. I was going to have some quick hits. My mistake on not being able to do this on Tuesday. We would have dropped a bomb just like we did when we were 2 months early on what exactly was going to happen with the Tigers. And we talked a little bit about the Lions, and I think we've already been proven correct, too, with what we were talking about in our crystal ball. And I was dead on about the Spartans, and I think you said it, too. Regression here. That's what we're looking at. But, wow, we're off. Michigan and Michigan State are off this weekend, and then they're coming back next weekend. I'm not going to get a chance to talk to you before that. What's your pick for the game?
I think Michigan's going to win. State might give it a fight or not. Who knows? But I think the Wolverines will take the Spartans.
Okay, but you got to. We know that the Wolverines are winning. Okay, what's your winning margin?
Oh man, the way the Spartans have been playing as of late, especially the last two games, they try to give it as much fight against Ohio State.
Yeah,
they got smashed by a juggernaut Buckeyes team, but they kept fighting against Wisconsin. They won in overtime on a touchdown by Jaden Reed, a leaping catch. When only they needed a field goal, they got a touchdown anyway.
Yeah.
A little extra icing on the cake.
Yeah. That was something that we talked about, is who's going to step up from the receiver corps. They had Reed coming back, but he looked like he was going to be injured. He is always hurt, unfortunately. I feel terrible for him. He seems to be tweaked all the time with something. But he stretches the field. I actually think Spartans keep it close. I like Michigan under a touchdown, Michigan by 6, but I still like the Wolverines to roll. It's going to be a slow, nasty game. I think they're going to run the ball a ton. But hopefully we can get a Michigan win. I'm going to hate if they lose to the Spartans again. I won't be able to deal with that. But I
like both teams equally. Yep. I like both teams equally, no matter what. Doesn't matter to me. But I think Michigan will win by at least 14.
14
because it's at home.
I like, you know what? I hope you're right on this one. I'd love to be wrong.
Yep. Jim Harbaugh is due for a win against Mel Tucker.
He needs one.
Yep, he does. So that has been our special episode of Pistons News and 2022-2023 NBA season preview on the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. I'm Taylor Phillips. He's Matthew Hutchinson. Follow the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Michigan_Truth. Like its Facebook page and subscribe to its YouTube channel. Also listen in audio form on Spreaker. Special business shout-outs go to Cali Tickets. Get a hold of Mark Goldman. Call him at 877-225-8425 or visit CaliTickets.com. Creative Embroidery of Cadillac for designing the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast logo on my T-shirt and long-sleeve shirt. United Food Service Solutions of Grand Ledge, Michigan, including Jim Lyons, a former DSR follower. And that's it. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast is a presentation and production of Phillips Media. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Hit them with a high. We rest our case.